Hello and welcome to another episode of Work 2.0, the podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wells, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Dave Treat. He is CTO at Pearson, the world-renowned educational body, and I'm delighted to have him on with me to discuss a recent report that came out as relates to AI. And I want to have this conversation because, as you already know, AI is very much a hot topic in workplaces today. But a lot of people are still, especially leaders and executives, are still trying to figure out what it means for their workforce, what it means for their careers, what it means for their own lives. So I brought Dave on with me to discuss this. Dave, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Brilliant. So just first off, give me a bit of context about your background, what you were doing at Pearson, what you did before you joined Pearson.
Let's see, I joined Pearson a little more than 18 months ago now, and joined as the Chief Technology Officer with a traditional CTO remit, and then about 8 months in, I picked up the CIO remit as well. So I own the technology agenda for Pearson in total. My career has been split between industry and consulting roles. I will be the first to admit most of the past 3 decades have been in financial services, but the original career path was in education. So I have a master's.
Full circle.
Full circle. So yeah, so I have a master's in higher education administration, and yeah, so I'm thrilled to have joined Pearson and get back to the original career path. And the original passion space, and apply all of the innovative technology focus that I've had for the past couple of decades to the world of learning.
Well, actually, I'm very curious about that because my mom, she's a teacher, she's an educator. She's been doing it for decades. So I'm kind of curious, before we get into the main body of the interview, if you don't mind, like, what's your take on AI and how it's impacting higher education?
Oh, I mean, we're seeing just an incredible impact when done right. If you think of AI as an answer engine, it's detrimental, right? You don't learn. If you're just getting the answer, you're not stretching your brain, you're not doing the work, you're not learning. So what we've been doing for the past more than 18 months now, started before I joined. The team has been putting out some AI-based tools that have just gotten better and better, and we now have the data to prove that when you use AI in a scaffolded learning science-based approach that's designed to engage the student's brain, work with the teacher and how they want to teach, thinking about teaching and learning as a system, and taking that very deliberate approach, you have incredible results. We've got just some of the data. We're seeing a more than 7% uplift in student engagement and performance if you're using our AI-based study tools. And 85% of the students using our higher ed tools in higher ed are getting the grade they want or better. So
wow.
we're seeing incredible results when used right, not as an answer engine.
Yeah, that's a very good point. When used right, I think that's a point that a lot of people miss. Like, they just think, oh, I can just use AI and everything will, like magic, everything will change, and it doesn't. My question for you is, we had a few weeks ago the World Economic Forum at Davos, and you guys at Pearson released a report that revealed something really interesting about there's massive AI investment, but it's not translating into real productivity gains. But you're seeing real gains at Pearson, but a lot of organizations are not seeing it, even though they're spending millions on AI investment and implementation. So I'm curious to know, from your vantage point, what is it that companies are fundamentally misunderstanding about this whole topic of AI and human capability? What are they misunderstanding? Why are they missing these productivity gains, even ROI?
Yeah, drawing from my home life, actually, I'll just use an example. So my youngest just turned 16, just got his learner's permit, and we're starting the process of teaching him how to drive.
Right.
I think a lot of companies are treating AI. If I were to take the car keys and toss them at my son and say, just have at it. Here's a wildly powerful tool that is going to change your life. Suddenly open up, the ability for to drive himself around and go all of the obvious around what a car represents. If I just tossed the keys at him, we would be spending a ton of money at the body shop and on speeding tickets, and he may be there's that fear of like, am I ready? And,
Yes.
and the hesitancy, and maybe he wouldn't actually just get out there and drive. And so we're doing what you're supposed to do. We signed him up for driver's ed. We're investing the time to go drive with him on the weekends and help him through a learning curve and give him the confidence to be a really good driver. And it will not just fundamentally change his life, it's going to change mine too. Like, I'm going to get out of being a chauffeur,
Uber.
a chauffeur, dad Uber, right? Exactly. And so I see a direct analogy with what's going on within companies, that if you just get onboard a whole bunch of AI tools and toss the keys at your employees and say have at it, it's going to be a similar experience, right? You're going to either have folks be afraid to engage because they don't know exactly how to apply it and they haven't thought it through, or difficulty, they might find difficulty in learning, or they might find might have resistance because of misconceptions around what it's going to mean for their job. And so I think we're seeing some of that. Companies, basically onboarding the tools and then expecting great things to happen. I think where we're seeing it work really well is like with my son's driving. There's a deliberate approach to learning the tools, to not thinking about automating tasks, but redefining the nature of the work holistically, thinking about the system of work. I think too often over any of the innovation waves, we've had the mental model of implement the tech, then train the people. Like change management follows the technology implementation. And I think with AI in particular, it's the exact wrong thing to do. I think that what we're already seeing is being much more powerful is to sit down and really think through the jobs that are being done, the systems of work that combine the humans and the technology, and rethinking what's possible. And this is not about automating the 10%. This is about augmenting the 90%. And if we take that mental model of how do we actually augment humans' ability to do more and more with now wildly powerful tools, and give them the training and learning to be able to do it effectively, that's where we're seeing great results. If you just throw the keys at the employee, it's not going to go very well.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that lack of that training, like you said, training before the implementation, is where there's a lot of time being wasted. So, people say, well, AI is supposed to save time, but actually time is wasted just using AI, right? And then there's people who use AI effectively, but they're actually not using it efficiently, because the time that's wasted, they're spending it taking time off, or just, browsing the internet, doing everything except being more effective in their roles. So if AI is saving employees lots of time, but then it's not delivering ROI at scale, I think the question we have to ask ourselves as leaders is, okay, where's that time going? Where is it getting lost? What's happening to that saved time? Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I'll go down one specific dimension. When you think about an agentic AI infrastructure, what it depends upon are the resources that it's given access to, right? So if I'm gonna build an agent for myself to accomplish something, it actually starts with the hard work of being able to have the fidelity and clarity and confidence in the underlying resources, the data, the process flows that you want to use to guide its activities. That investment up front in the data foundations and the skills and the structures are just critical. And I don't, oftentimes people don't put enough energy into that. The more you have the foundations right, then the more effective the actual agent creation or agent building. The more it will generate actual results and improvements. So AI is often just applied to shallow tasks and not really thinking through the end-to-end processes. And so that saved time, if there is some, just getting absorbed back into the general workflow and experience, instead of really taking a step back and thinking through, with great foundations, can I actually then effectively augment the work that I'm doing, and that's when the time save starts to flow.
Right. So your report also mentions that pairing AI with workforce upskilling could add, potentially about over 6 trillion 6.5 trillion to the US economy. And that's a crazy number, right, to think about. That's drastically changing the GDP. So what do you think has to change within organizations? Because we're talking about a very short space of time today. We're in 2026, next year is 2027. And a lot of predictions about AI and the impact that it can make are usually the same by the year 2027 or by the year 2030. 2027 is right around the corner. So what is it that you think has to change within organizations by next year, basically, for that 6.6 trillion upside to become a reality?
Let me boil it down. I'll talk about three things. So one is the recognition of just how much of the workforce will need to be reskilled, right? So the WEF report that was put out, showed that, that I think the number was 59% of jobs will need, dramatic reskilling by 2030, right? Which is, again, just over the next several years. So that understanding of what are the current skills, what's the skills composition of my current workforce, identifying what needs to change, what is the opportunity to learn, what is that potential. Like, first and foremost, you need to have the clear career architecture and understanding of your workforce's current skills to be able to know what to do. Most organizations do not have a great handle on skills data. The feedback that we get from CHROs is that typically we know, you know someone better on the day you hire them than several years later, because on that day you've hired them, you've studied their CV, you've interviewed them, you've maybe given assessments, you've really gotten into their depth of skills to be able to make that hiring decision.
Yeah.
And then just classically across enterprises, there's just not great tracking of then that skilling over years. So knowing what you have is crucial. We've got a framework called DEEP, and it's the first step in it. Diagnose. Can you diagnose the skills that your organization has? Really, the second step then in this DEEP framework is embed. How do you embed learning experiences into the flow of your workers' lives? The notion of I'm going to take hands off keyboard on the systems I use every day, and I'm going to log on to an LMS and take my mandatory training, and I'm going to watch a video for 30 minutes and then answer multiple choice questions. We know that doesn't work to build skills, right? Our data basically shows that at maximum you're retaining you're retaining 70%, you're retaining 30% after 1 day and 10% after a week.
Yes.
Right? And so it's just not an effective way to learn. And so what we're doing is really focused on how do you embed learning in the flow of work with micro learning experiences that push and nudge skills much more elegantly and don't take someone away from their job, but really understand the context of their job and drive those experiences in. So we've launched a few of those products, and it's a big focus.
Amazing.
We can talk more about that. Yeah. The last two parts of the framework are evaluate. How do you then have a better mechanism to evaluate someone's skills progression? Have a language for it, have the ability to offer proof in the form of credentials that can stay with the individual and then be used for the last part of it, which then is prioritize. How do you then actually do a better job to match worker to work? Help people understand the career pathways that are available to them. And so this notion of diagnosing skills, embedding learning experiences in the flow of work, evaluating people's real progress at skill building through assessments, and then prioritizing how to actually change their lives to open up new career opportunities. That's what has to happen. That's the trick.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think, especially when you said embedding, I 100% agree with you on that, because I've observed it, and there's studies that prove this, that the biggest upskilling barrier for many professionals is lack of time. So you talking about embedding it into their work is so, I love that you came up with that approach, that idea, because as an organization, because that really effectively removes that barrier, that excuse of I don't have the time or my work day is crowded. It may not be an excuse, it's very valid, right? That's the last thing you want to think about, is logging onto an LMS. But you embedding it, and I talk to people a lot about peer-to-peer mentorship. Think about networking opportunities, which in themselves are learning opportunities if you use them the right way. There's a peer-to-peer mentorship by senior leaders, having those one-to-one conversations with your boss. All those are learning opportunities that people take for granted. But if you see them the right way, that saves you a lot of time, and you're learning throughout the week as you're working. Yeah. So I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, the example, our recent example, we launched a product called Communication Coach at Microsoft Ignite, and so the original idea was to help people who are learning English as a second language to be able to get feedback after a meeting. So it basically takes the team's transcript and call recording, and then gives a card after the meeting with specific guidance around grammar, syntax, vocab. We quickly realized that we could expand that, though, to be broader communication. And now it's serving everyone, giving them feedback that's geared to their role level, geography, language, etc. And I'm finding it wildly powerful for myself. Even at my stage of my career, I'm getting feedback after meetings that no one gives me. Right? Like I'll give an example. I did a town hall. Maybe I'll actually even pull it up. I did a town hall a couple of weeks ago, and I got feedback. I answered some difficult questions around some things that we're doing around our internal HR processes, and I got high fives from my team coming out of the meeting, basically saying, I stuck to the script, I nailed it. This is not often my strength to stick to the script, but I got, they were very, everyone was happy. I nailed the points, the communication that I was meant to give. I'm trying to just quickly scroll to it to see if I can find it. Here, I found it. I got the feedback, though, that when asked a question about title changes and how they might feel like a demotion, you gave a very detailed, process-oriented answer about standardization and tiers. While factually correct, this was an opportunity to connect on a more personal level and acknowledge the emotional impact, directly reinforcing a culture of trust and transparency.
Wow.
This is the kind of feedback that, like, now after every meeting, I'm getting feedback geared to my performance as a CTO. That's invaluable to me. It's feedback I don't often get. It's a level of honesty and challenge that sometimes, I love finding people who give me candid feedback, but it's not often the case. And so this notion of embedding these kinds of learning experiences at any level of your career into the flow of what you're doing, we're just getting tremendous feedback about. And of course, this expands in lots of different directions as we go forward. But it's giving us the confidence that we're onto something here, that embedding feedback into the flow of work on the platforms that people are using to do their day jobs is what's going to be really powerful.
That's amazing. Having that communication coach, I know Microsoft has it in PowerPoint. They have like a very similar, not to the extent of that detail, but very similar coach where you can practice, rehearse your PowerPoint presentation and have the coach analyze. But that's powerful. I didn't know that actually existed. I would definitely gonna look into that, because especially for leaders, some teams are afraid to give feedback, like honest feedback. And again, that's down to us to create that culture for them. But even still, no one's going to be upfront and honest with you. And it's kind of like you may have a leadership coach, but that leadership coach is not going to be with you in every meeting that you attend. That's but right. Having that there in real time, and then maybe you could share that feedback with your leadership coach and say, this is what I'm working on. Can you help me with that? I think that's powerful. So thanks a lot for sharing.
Yeah, and I'll just extend it just one more click. I think we can all relate to when we were students and maybe we're afraid to ask the question. Or didn't raise our hands for whatever reason, the class was too big, or we were shy, or whatever the reason. Same dynamic applies in an enterprise setting, right? There are questions that people just are self-conscious about asking, and so again, this notion of having an agent that's with you, that understands the context of your job, that can then, in the context of the work that you're doing, give you an ability to ask that question, to get guidance, and to not just get the answers, but to get a learning science-based intervention that guides you down a solution that makes your brain do the work so that you actually struggle and learn. Mm-hmm. Again, this is what we're after.
So just to wrap up, give me in one word, what do you think is, when you look at how fast AI is moving, what do you think is going to be like the number one, or okay, I'll let you have one or two words. What do you think is going to be the the number one skill or mindset that professionals and leaders are going to need over the next 5 years?
Learning is the skill.
Learning.
I think that what we're, just with the magnitude of skill development that's going to be required at every level, learning is the skill. If
wow, I love that.
if you can learn to learn better and better, this is going to be a wonderful experience.
Yes. Amazing, amazing. I asked the same question to Coursera's CEO, and Greg Hart, and he said the exact same thing, except he phrased it differently. He said adaptability, which is kind of the same thing, because you're adapting to the constant pace of learning every day. So amazing. Thank you so much, Dave, for coming on the show. It was great having you. And for those of you who've listened to this podcast episode, feel free to comment, feel free to share it with your coworkers, feel free to follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube, even on Substack, wherever you're seeing it. And don't forget, to react, to comment, to share, and follow us so that you can also rate it, and come back next Monday for another episode of Work 2.0, the podcast.